Is UConn about to land both Eric Riebe and Braylon Mullins in back-to-back weeks? You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content, please take a second to subscribe on YouTube and follow wherever you listen to audio versions of the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. It really helps the show grow, and I genuinely appreciate the support. But also, every follow, subscription, download not only helps build our UConn community, but also generates more revenue for UConn NIL in their initiatives, because we're giving 10% to Bleeding Blue for Good, otherwise known as Store Central. And there's also some really exciting news that I wanted to bring up as well. I'm donating another 10% of all revenue to the Husky Ticket Project. I'm proud to partner with them. They help send kids to games and make a real difference in underserved communities. So that helps me out. If you guys help me, we can help building NIL and building dreams for kids that get to go to basketball games, football games, et cetera, at UConn. So let's make Locked On UConn your first listen every day and send some kids to some ball games going forward. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, are we on the brink of basketball utopia? We have our first glimpse of the two-time champs tonight in a scrimmage against Rhode Island at Mohegan Sun at 6 o'clock. But before that, I want you to listen to this clearly. We are bringing in Mr. Crystal Ball himself to talk through if Braylon Mullins and Eric Riebe are both coming to UConn. So, Colby, thank you for joining us. Is UConn about to do this? Are they about to land both of these guys?
It seems to be trending that way. Obviously, Big Eric just came out. He'll be announcing his decision Wednesday. I feel like the Huskies sit in a really good spot for him. Obviously, I'll start by saying this, and if there's one guarantee, especially in basketball recruiting today, is that there are no guarantees. You further that with Bill Self and Kansas being involved in a recruitment. You can never write anything in Sharpie with that. And then Creighton, they've done a good job with Eric throughout. They were really the first high major to really get on him and be consistent with him early in the recruiting process. But I just think the situation that Hurley and company have painted to him, not only from a playing standpoint, but just in other areas that, Eric needs to improve on in order to reach his goals of eventually playing in the NBA. I think it's kind of laid out for him there. And there's a spot where, he can see himself realistically going there and being a focal piece, say like a Donovan Clingan. I know that's the easy, low hanging fruit. And I know you've covered that in previous episodes, but very different style, as you've also mentioned.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one because he does play a different style. He's not as, and this is no knock on Eric, he's just not as big as Donovan. Like he's maybe not as, maybe height-wise, a couple inches aside, but just like thickness-wise, he's not the same body type. He plays a little bit more of a stretch 4 or 5. I wonder, do you have intel on that, on like what they've kind of laid out for him in what his role would look like? Or like, can you even expand on what your thoughts are on that?
Well, I think what would happen, I think they have a really good thing going in terms of, it would be definitely a different approach than Donovan, as you said. Donovan's going to get, touches on the block. He was a very, great passer. He had good vision, especially when the double teams came his way. He also had a lot of guys around him that even, highlighted those skills that he has. Eric is a lot more, I don't want to use the word finesse because he's got, and I also don't want to use the word skilled because Donovan was skilled. Don't get it twisted. You guys know that better than anybody. But in terms of where they are at in their developmental process right now, Eric has a lot more of a perimeter game. He can do a little bit more off the bounce. He is a good passer. I don't know if I would put him quite on Donovan's level right now, but it can get to that point just because of all the little things he can do. I was in attendance to Bullis practice the other night last week, and UConn had Hurley and assistant coach Luke Murray there while we were watching, and there were a lot of things that Eric was doing that I don't necessarily remember him doing, but it brought out a reaction out of Hurley, especially on the sideline when they were playing 3-on-3, 4-on-4. He had a big playing against them, and just time after time again, one specific possession, just set a screen, caught the roll, put his shoulder down, put the big on his butt, and just went up and threw it down. And throughout the gym, obviously all the kids are getting excited and whatnot.
Yeah.
Definitely warranted a reaction from the lookers on the sideline. So I say that to say he would be a lot more involved in high ball screens, and there's a lot of actions that you can do out of that. I see him being a very good option in the short roll action, catching at the high post, getting that high-low action going. But all in all, he brings a lot different of a toolbox than Donovan. But I still think that toolbox impacts winning at the same level eventually. I think it's just with anything. When any player, there's not many players out here that are Hurley type of guys and can take to his coaching, take to his culture. And I don't want to say that's not going to be a challenge for Eric. But I think if he can get that buy into it and thrive in that sort of system, then we're talking about a legitimate NBA prospect.
Last question on Eric before we turn our attention to Braylon Mullins. And then I'm going to ask you about your process and how you do the crystal ball stuff. And we'll get to that in a second. But specific to Eric, do you get a sense that he's a main priority for them, considering what they're likely going to lose this season with Samson Johnson going, not maybe going pro, or just he's just not going to be available. Obviously, next year for them, he'll be out of eligibility. Do you get a sense that they want to bring another 7-footer in? Eric's skill set is that priority for them?
100%. There was a few positions. I know, obviously they got Darius Adams. There's a couple more chips to be moved here in the near future, but there were a few positions where they were prioritizing one guy and one guy only. And in their position, they can do that, but still, I mean, you're recruiting 5 stars and going against other blue blood programs, and it always makes things muddy in terms of if you will land them. So I thought it was, it's risky, right? Because you put all your eggs into Eric's basket or player B's basket, you better get them. And it's not to say if they weren't, they're going to strike out. From what I was told, if UConn wasn't getting Eric, they'll be like, okay, we're just going to go heavy portal shopping for a difference maker at that center position. So in terms of because again, their evaluation process as a recruiting perspective as a whole is they're recruiting a kid, but also the parents, also the family, also everybody around these kids. So it's a very in-depth process with them. And I think once they lock onto one guy, they say, if we get this kid, great. If not, we'll figure out plan B when we get there. And I think it's gonna reward them.
Yeah, I've been equating. I don't think I've actually done this in the show, so this will be the first time I say this. But Dan Hurley's evaluation process is likely similar to if you're vetting someone for a high level security clearance. For because they just love their culture so much, and I know they don't want to go portal. They'll do it. They'll 100% go portal. But if they can, and I've talked about them creating like this almost super class, because they want guys that are their guys that they can have for a couple of years, or if they proceed the way they should, maybe they go pro early. But he doesn't want the tried and true one and dones. He wants guys he can come in and develop. So I think you're spot on there. But when we return, let's talk about the other crystal ball that you have, which is Braylon Mullins. He's announcing on October 23rd, also on 247. We're going to talk about him and how you go about making these predictions and much more coming up after this. When you're hiring for a small business, finding the right professional can feel like a big task. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is a game changer. They offer all the tools to help you find quality professionals faster, and the best part, it's free. I just did this last week, and I posted a job. I got 12 applicants. I got 8 phenomenal candidates. I interviewed 3 candidates, and I'll likely be offering one of the top 3 a role next week. True story. It's not just an ad. I live this experience every day. LinkedIn Jobs is a phenomenal way to get quality candidates for any small business. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. If you're not using LinkedIn, you're missing out. Plus, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. Hire like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your jobs for free. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. That's LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's bring back Colby. I'm going to attempt to do your name, Jacobino. Did I say it right?
Close, man. Jacobino.
Jacobino. Okay.
Yep.
Colby Jacobino from you're at 247. Where else can people find your stuff before we get into Braylon?
Yeah, 247 and Made Hoops. That's where all my content is.
All right, fantastic. Guys, check him out. Give him a follow. Check out all of his work. I know UConn fans are literally descending upon your predictions. So another prediction you have is Braylon Mullins. He's going to do a 247 announcement. I'm doing a live reaction show with Locked On Hoosiers to kind of see who is the winner of this. And so far, if we're going by your prediction, why is Braylon choosing UConn according to your prediction?
I think this 2025 recruiting class in particular is more of a domino effect than we've seen in recent classes. And again, like, kind of bleeding in probably to the next question, but it's always an information game. It's always a, source game and who you're talking to. And that expands way beyond college coaches, AAU coaches, high school coaches, family, everything. You kind of take everything that you gather into one and you try to come to a clear understanding of what's going on. With that said, it still doesn't mean you're always going to be right. But, in terms of how I do my process is if I see things adding up to a certain way, I've learned over, my career in doing this, is just like, it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck. Now, I will say, I say all that to say, with Braylon, it's not a clear picture. I wouldn't say it's a clear cut, no brainer. UConn, he has no chance of going to Indiana. Indiana's going to stick in there. And plenty of prospects, especially where I reside, Baltimore, the DMV area. Indiana's always involved with those guys, and they're always involved with them until the end. And they give very, very intriguing arguments. Now we're talking about an Indiana kid. Moving away from home. After you've read tons of things online saying that whether people around him or Braylon doesn't want to be away from home. Do with that what you will. From the information that I've gathered and the puzzle pieces that I've put together, I knew that there was one specific thing that would make me feel comfortable with putting in the crystal ball. And I received that information right before and checked in with a few other people. It was kind of adding up. And I was like, I think this is where this is going to head. So again, and I've done that with plenty of my other predictions as well. So it's not just a flat out guess. I know people are going to say that no matter what I tell you, but,
sure.
But I just think with some of the other actions, with some of the other guys that we have on the screen here in terms of who goes where, once things start to fall into place, you can kind of fill it in from there. But I mean, obviously I've talked to people around both sides of everything. Felt comfortable with going with UConn. Okay.
And about your process, because you kind of explained it there, and that's great. Now you don't even have to worry about the question, but I mean, dude, it's not like, if people are giving you flack about, oh, you're just guessing, you're kind of doing blah, blah, blah. If you go on your crystal ball for Colby Jacobino on 247, you're at all time 95%. So I don't know too many people that bet these days that don't bet these days. But if you were selling betting picks at 95%, you'd make quite a good living. So talk to people about that. Like, that's my biggest thing is like, it's not just that we're on Locked On UConn, and obviously we want both of these guys to come. And if they don't, listen, I've had conversations with people on Braylon's camp that I've said, if he goes to Indiana, I'm going to wish him the best. I hope that kid has a phenomenal college career / going into the NBA. Same with Eric. I don't have as much intel on Eric. So to me, it's we want him, and I think most rational UConn fans are going to wish him well. There's always a few crazies. That's fine. Do your own, but like talk to people about that 95% number, and just kind of like it's a thorough process. Like you're not just like, oh, I talked to this guy, blah blah blah. Like go through that just maybe a little more in depth.
Yeah, no, I mean, I try to be thorough with it. It's not, I'm not just getting, unless the person that I'm talking with just flat out says, hey man, it's done. Like it's done. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm checking in from a lot of different angles. And there's a lot of times where, like, for me personally, if I feel any sort of hesitancy, I hold off. I hold off. And like I said, I did go out on a little bit of a limb with Braylon. But again, as more and more started coming to me, with the way that I usually do this process, I was just like, look, this is where I'm going. It makes sense. It makes sense for Indiana too, as you just said. But I will say this, I just want to speak to this too, and this isn't to like come off any sort of way. The one thing that does kind of tick me off, I have gotten a few wrong. So of course the two that come to mind right away that eat me up are Curtis Givens, that just shocked me, and then Jaden Quaintance, who Quaintance eventually went to Arizona State. I heard from a lot of different people it was done at Louisville, but didn't get done. But the other ones that they've got me wrong on, and I can't do anything about, is Boogie Flan. Like I predicted him to go to Kentucky, but then he decommits with Cal and goes to Arkansas. Jace Butler, same thing with Illinois and Washington. And then Ben Hammond, a guy in my backyard who I knew was going to Rhode Island. Now he goes to Virginia Tech. But like I can't do anything about them. So it is what it is. But for me, being the competitor that I am, I'm like,
of course,
I want those back.
Of course. And you know what? Here's the thing, man. Like it's take it back to when Dan Hurley was thinking about the Lakers. All these guys who are in these crystal balls for you coming to UConn, I don't think they're coming if he doesn't stay. And maybe if he makes that decision later, or if something crazy happened where he left, these guys decommit. Yeah, I don't know if Darius Adams would still be here if or would be committed to UConn if Dan Hurley and the staff weren't here. So I get it, man. There's factors that you can't control. So, but that's what makes it even more impressive that you're at 95%. I will say that. So, so let's pivot a little bit to some not these guys are all fantastic players, and I want to give them some ample time. I got inundated with messages early last week. Have you heard about Jacob Furphy coming to UConn? And I was just like, no. And kind of went on, did a little deep dive on him. What have you heard there, if anything? Is there a push to kind of get, I don't want to say put pressure on anybody, but like it's one of those things where recruiting is such a like you said, a domino effect game. Is there room for all these guys? Like for example, if Jacob Furphy said, yeah, I want to come to UConn, does that make Braylon's decision any different? Or do you think Braylon is making his own choice regardless of what happens with Jacob Furphy or any other guard that goes to UConn?
So, and I want to reiterate, like, I'm not speaking on behalf of UConn, or anything.
Sure.
That.
Nor am I.
I think Braylon controls that decision. A lot of people's decision. A lot of times with how, this recruiting works, especially with all the other layers that have been brought in over the years, whether it's NIL, you go ahead and name it. But when you're prioritizing, a lot of times these schools will say, here, like we have 3 or 4 guys that we want at the 2 guard. Let's just throw that out there. 3 or 4 guys we want at the 2 guard. If one of, if we have 2 guys at the top, first, if they're able to commit to whoever commits to us first out of those 2 guys, we're taking. But if the 3rd guy calls and wants to commit, we got to hold off till one of these other 2 that we're prioritizing, unless they feel comfortable taking the 3rd guy. It's definitely, there's a method to all that madness. I say that to say, I think Braylon controls it all, and they want to hold off on doing anything until his decision. Jake, and to address your other question with Furphy, I don't have a ton of intel on that front, but what I have heard is the people that are within the inner workings wouldn't be surprised if he came out tomorrow and committed to UConn. Like, it wouldn't shock me. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the other school involved with him that has been Illinois. So who knows on that? But I haven't been able to get dependable intel in terms of if Jacob were to press UConn and say, hey, I'm ready to go. And if UConn were to say, give us a little bit of time here, still trying to figure stuff out, or, just say, hey, okay, let's roll with Furphy and just let Mullins know it's going to be really difficult to make it work if you do decide us.
Yeah, no, I think I think that would be I think your first kind of inference is probably true. And again, I will also make a very blanket statement that I do not represent UConn. I do a show on them. So, and I don't have a call to Dan Hurley anytime soon. So, I don't know for sure, but I would agree that if we're just kind of making inferences that it's likely they're waiting on Braylon to make his decision. And not to say that Jacob is, a secondhand choice, but if they like one over the other, that's just life, man. That's just the way it goes. Yep. I have heard that regardless of what happens with Eric, that Nico is kind of in their radar. It's very similar to what you just said, that they're waiting to see what happens with Eric on Wednesday on what they're going to end up doing with Nico. Can you see a scenario where they get both, and why would that be?
No, there's not a scenario where they would get both.
Really?
No. I mean, I feel confident in saying that.
Okay.
Take that for what it's worth, but I think if they get Eric, they'll be set at that position that they were trying to fill. Obviously, they don't. You can move Nico over to the 4.
Sure.
In some crazy lineups, he's skilled. He can move to the 3. But I feel like if they're getting Eric's commitment on Wednesday, they kind of reach out to Nico. Hey, it's been great. Best of luck to you. Regarding Nico, I think, I've been hearing some Ohio State buzz around him.
Me too.
It'll be interesting to see how that all, kind of works out. I just, and I know the last thing that I heard with, obviously Michigan State is not really involved with him as much anymore. They're still, as you said, like UConn, keeping him on the radar, keeping in touch with him, but not pressing for him. So I would say, UConn gets Eric, you can kind of cross off Nico. Again, what I was talking about with the puzzle pieces coming together, everything starts to kind of fit a little bit better.
Fair enough. Last 2 kids I wanted to touch on. I don't think UConn's getting either, but I want to understand. I want to know your thoughts on the recruitment process with Caden Lewis and Malik Thomas. Just give me kind of a rundown where you think they're going to go. I have a Caden going to Kentucky. I have Malik going to Arkansas. Is that kind of the prevailing theme among people in your circle?
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. I'm actually pretty close with the Caden, and I think that the people who have been speaking out about his recruitment, it's again, you got to do your job, but it's funny. It's funny to see where kind of information lies, because
sure.
I still wouldn't count out Duke for a Caden, even with them getting the Boozer twins. I wouldn't completely put them out of the race, but with Darius committing to UConn, everybody kind of automatically as well crossed off a Caden when they got Darius. That again, that wasn't the case in terms of from what I've been told.
I heard that too.
Yep, they were still very much recruiting him heavily and everything else, but with way everything is transitioning now as they close in on Mullins or Furphy. Again, that picture kind of comes a little bit clearer. And I think ultimately a Caden lands at Kentucky, if I had to guess. And then, as you said, Malik ending up at Arkansas. I just want to keep my eye on Kansas State as well with Malik. So, and with Malik, I think he's the epitome of it's unpredictable. It's very hard to predict where he's going to end up, but you can definitely see him down there in Arkansas with Cal.
Okay. Before we let you go, man, first off, really appreciate you coming on. Listen to this quote. I don't have the audio, but I'm going to read it to you. This is what Dan Hurley said in an article with our next guest, Adam Zagoria. He said, a critical part of our recruiting when a potential recruit comes to visit is that they're able to watch an in-season practice, and they watch so much film with other incoming recruits. We watch, obviously, all the way they play. He said they know so much about who we are already. Plus, they had the luxury of watching us play all the way through the national championship game the last 2 years. They know who we are, and they know how we play, and they know the opportunities for playing time in their spots because we are detailed with it, and we're pretty good and honest about it. What are your thoughts on that, just from Dan Hurley's perspective? We talked about his recruiting style. Like, is that pretty accurate from what you're hearing on the trail with players that are recruited by UConn?
Absolutely. I mean, you go to UConn to obviously you go to UConn to win. That's kind of the reputation that they've built, obviously. But it's more than that. It's going through a war of a practice every single day, being disciplined beyond the court, holding yourself to a certain standard off the court. And then again, I just would reiterate like the way that they recruit the parents, and it's so crucial within that process. A lot of schools will, and it's not, they don't suck up to the parents. They figure out who the parents are as people, and then they choose whether do we really want to get involved with a situation like this. You can do that when you're back-to-back champs, and that's what they do. I mean, they were doing that prior, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But
sure.
But it only furthers their argument for it. And with to me, that's the key to building a tremendous culture moving forward, because everybody knows the standard. So when somebody doesn't really fit into that mold, they kind of excuse themselves out of the picture. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
So I think they do a great job of that in the recruiting aspect. But obviously, like I was very close with Cam Spencer in terms of covering him when he was coming up here in Baltimore. And like they knocked that one out of the park, obviously. But those people around Cam, his brother could have played for Dan Hurley. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone in that family was wired the way that Hurley was. And I think that's where they really exceed expectations in that sense.
Let me ask you this one question if you have time. When it comes to this, though, because and that's a great example, because I use the Cam Spencer like it's Dan's mini me all the time. But or it's probably the other way around when it comes to height. But when we're talking recruiting, and especially in the transfer portal, where you kind of know what you're getting because you saw them play, but it's wired the same is a great word for Cam Spencer and Dan Hurley. But Tristan Newton is not wired like Dan Hurley. He's wired in the respect of he wants to win and he has the same kind of mentality. But talk to me about how Dan adjusts to like a guy like Tristan, who, you know, you may not have like a close relationship with him, but I mean, everyone that has seen Tristan Newton he's a Houston kid. He's laid back. He's chill. Cam is like, I'm going to rip your, you know what, head off. Like Tristan is not like that, at least outwardly. So I'm just curious, like how they balance that. You know, we get a couple of psychos in a nice way on our team, but also you kind of need some of these guys like Tristan that are pretty chill, let like everything roll off their back. Because
they're both the same goal. Cam wants to do anything to win. As you said, Tristan wants to do anything to win. And I think the staff does a really nice job of knowing there's different paths to getting different kids there, because you're not going to be able to fit all these kids into a mold, especially these days. But there's different paths to get to winning. But as long as your end destination is winning, we can be on that common ground. And yes, I might do some things that freak you out or make no sense to you, but you're going to do things that don't make sense to me, and I'm going to be willing to work through that. And I think that's where, you know, the guys that they're recruiting, I don't think any of those guys are wired like Hurley per se, you know, hand in hand, but they're going to find that way to eventually get them there, with the common destination being, you know, winning and championships.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Colby, really appreciate your time, man. Come by and check on us anytime. Love to have you. Wealth of knowledge. Really cool to listen about your process. And hopefully next time we chat, we'll maybe have one extra recruit in the mix and waiting for another one.
Hey, man, I'm available anytime. Anytime you need me. Appreciate you having me on. Keep doing great work with what you're doing. And yeah, man, I mean, you guys are in a good spot.
All right. Thanks, man. We'll talk soon. Hey, if you're like me, you love going to live events, whether it's catching a game, a concert, even some stand-up comedy. I remember the last time I used Game Time, I scored amazing seats for a game right at the last minute, and it was actually a comedy show. Saved a ton. With Game Time's new picks feature, finding a great deal has never been easier. Game Time picks, they filter out fluff to show you only the best deals on seats, so you don't have to spend ages scrolling through lists. Plus, I love how the app shows you the seat view before you buy. And don't forget about the all-in pricing feature, which lets you see the total cost up front. Just remember to turn it on. And get this, Game Time has the lowest price guarantee. If you find a lower price in the same section on another app or ticket marketplace, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. If you go on Game Time right now, UConn tickets this weekend at home against Wake Forest at the Rent, they're starting at $6. If you want to sit close, they start around $25. Go get some tickets and support the Huskies. So if you want to start to make your next live event easy and affordable, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege. What time is it? Game time. Oh. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with Adam Zagoria of zagsblog, NJ.com, and the New York Times. Adam, you wrote a piece that I really kind of latched onto all of your writing, but in particular when we start talking about Dan Hurley, and I was struck by some of his quotes. I think we all want to kind of come into this and watch this scrimmage tonight that's happening at Mohegan Sun against Rhode Island and judge them on if they're going to be capable of three-peating and all that kind of craziness.
Yeah.
But he was like, we're going to look a lot different than probably what people remember us for obvious reasons. Can you touch on that a little bit? Like, what was his tone in that conversation? I'm wondering what he's looking to see tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think he reset expectations pretty well.
Yeah.
I think Dave Borges might have asked, what are we going to see? What are you hoping to see? When this team takes the floor. And he was like, look, we're not going to be the team that we were in Phoenix, Arizona when they won the NCAA championship. We're not going to be the team that you saw at he said MSG, he meant the Big East tournament. Obviously this is a completely different team. Some of those guys are in the NBA, they're gone. And, it's also October of a new season when all these coaches are just looking to find out what they have and try out different pieces and different groupings. I mean, I know we're talking about UConn, but like I went to Seton Hall today and, Shaheen's got 8 transfers and 2 freshmen and he's excited, but, no matter how many new pieces you have on a team, whether it's that many or a smaller amount like Danny has, you're still using this time to see what you have.
Absolutely. And obviously trying to replace, key losses, Donovan Clingan, Stephon Castle, Cam, Tristan, the whole bit. Which players does he think, according to him, are kind of progressing at the rate that he wants? I don't know. I don't necessarily know. There's some players that aren't kind of where he wants them to be right now. But I think you mentioned Liam McNeely is offensively kind of advanced. That Aiden Mahaney's playing at a higher level as the games are approaching. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he didn't kind of break down too many players. He wasn't really asked to. I think obviously he's relying on Alex Caravan to be the leader and the main returning guy. And, he pretty much said he didn't know who any of the starters were going to be, other than Alex Caravan. I did talk to Seth Greenberg a week or two ago from ESPN. He had been to a practice. He said he was very impressed with Solo Ball, Caravan, and the freshman Isaiah Abraham, which is interesting because I wasn't sure how much Abraham was going to play, and I'm still not, but Seth was impressed by him. Obviously they have enough DNA returning. You got, Hassan Diarra, you got, guys like Solo Ball and Jalen Stewart, played last year. Jalen obviously played during the run to the tournament. So, Caravan. So you've got some DNA from that team, Samson Johnson, obviously, that you can rely on. And then you can tell he's still molding guys like Aiden Mahaney and Liam McNeely into the players he wants them to be. Aiden Mahaney's coming over from the West Coast Conference. He was a scorer there, but, he's probably not used to the physicality, toughness, defensive pressure of the Big East. Liam McNeely's a freshman, and no matter how talented he is offensively, he's still going to have to learn how to play defense the Dan Hurley way and the Big East way. So, it's a 6-month marathon.
Yeah. Give UConn fans, play what's the word I'm looking for? Play a peacemaker, if you will. If this team comes out and doesn't look very good, what would you say to UConn fans to kind of quell their anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what we've just been saying here, that it's October. It's still 2-3 weeks before any real games are played. A lot can change between now and then. And then obviously over the course of a season, your team's going to grow and mesh, and Danny's going to know who he can trust, and you can rest assured he's going to yell at everyone on this team and get in their face. And, the guys who can man up and learn how to play that way or are comfortable playing that way will play, and maybe some guys who won't. I mean, I saw the AP poll came out today. They're third. Yep. That's, obviously their expectations that this team is going to be really good again and contend for a three-peat. But, I saw a bunch of the comments on Twitter and I guess in response to your post that, you are losing some major pieces. I mean, Donovan Clingan was just an absolute monster and force last year, especially in the tournament. 7'2". The guy was unstoppable in the paint on the lobs and the screen and rolls, and defensively he was a monster. And guards like Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer, they're older, veteran guys on their second or third school. They could score. They'd been around the block. And now you got some younger Solo and Jalen are sophomores. Ahmad Noel's a freshman. Liam's a freshman. So, youth is it's a big thing.
No, I agree there. You mentioned the AP poll. I was gonna go there right now. Is that fair? You think that's 3 is fair? And do you, kind of a side question of that is, I do. And this is before Dan Hurley even went on interview shows saying that they should be consensus number 1 based off of what they've done the last 2 years. I did a whole show in the summer saying that the amount of the chasm that they've created from a coaching perspective in what they've created at UConn should based off of Dan Hurley and his staff, even returning a few starters, a few people, they should give him that benefit of the doubt based off of what they've done the last 2 years. It happens in football all the time with the Alabamas and the Georgias. I think with UConn, they should have gotten the nod. I still think 3 is fair. I've seen worse than that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, Kansas, who's number 1, and Alabama, who I think is number 2, are really good.
Sure.
And Bill Self is the only other active coach besides Danny to win 2 championships, unless you want to count our guy Rick Pitino, who we all win 2. But look, Kansas has Hunter Dickinson back. He's a force. They got a really good team there with DeJuan Harris and AJ Storr, transfer from Wisconsin. They got some good freshmen coming in. And Alabama's roster, I'm just looking it up so I see it here, is also completely loaded. So, and Alabama's been one of these teams every year that's, they're in the Final Four, they're knocking on the door, and, one of these years they might win it. But, they got Mark Sears back, Aiden Holloway, Grant Nelson's back there. They got Cliff Amori, the Rutgers transfer, Aiden Sherrill. I don't need to list their whole roster, but both these teams are really good. So I think it's none of these coaches are going to care too much who the preseason number 1 is. I mean, I know Danny likes to use that as fodder to get people fired up, but they're all going to tell you it matters who's number 1 in March and April.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think deep down, I think Dan likes it that they get a little disrespected in his words, or whatever you want to call it.
Of course,
because it fuels the fire, right? Who nobody believes in you even with what you've done the last 2 years. I love that aspect of it. Okay, let me pivot before I let you go. Talk to me about Rick Pitino. What did our Big East friend there, down in Lexington, donning the UK blue again? I wanted to get your thoughts on this. You cover college basketball on a national level. I mean, it was a little weird. I mean, I thought it was weird. My opinion, people can do whatever they want, but what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was definitely a very unique situation. I mean, you have look, he was invited down there by the head basketball coach, Mark Pope, and the football coach, Stoops. It's homecoming weekend. We all know, Rick loves to be loved, and he has always referred to Kentucky as Camelot and his time there as Camelot. And so he was invited down there. And, it's just it's definitely unique. I'll use that word, that the sitting head coach at St. John's is at the Kentucky Midnight Madness in a Kentucky shirt, and then is at the Kentucky football game in a Kentucky blue shirt. I mean, he did wear his St. John's gear when he was speaking to the Kentucky guys at practice. And look, I get it. He's Rick Pitino. He's a Hall of Famer. He's maybe the greatest active coach there is. And it doesn't sound like the St. John's fans got too upset, although I saw my colleague Zach Brazilier from the Post, basically saying he didn't think Rick should have worn the Kentucky blue. So, definitely was interesting and raised some eyebrows. But I think if you're a St. John's fan, you're thinking, hey, this guy's a two-time national champ, Hall of Famer, and I hope he can bring some of that magic to St. John's.
No, I didn't even have it just struck me. I think like most fans, you were like, oh, okay, you're wearing the blue at the football game, all that, and then at practice. So I agree with you. It's kind of much ado about nothing, but it's Rick Pitino, so he's a Big East guy. We talk about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think, is there any analogy like if Danny was invited to the Rhode Island Midnight Madness and Danny wore a Rhode Island shirt, would the UConn fans care that much? I mean, it would be a little weird, but I mean, he's the UConn coach. I'm not sure they'd care.
Right.
It's definitely visually, it was a little unique.
Yeah, it has everything to do with because it's Kentucky. If Dan did that to Rhode Island, we wouldn't bat an eye. We'd be like, hey, have a great time. Have a good night. Well, listen, Adam, we appreciate your insight as always. Go enjoy the rest of your day, and maybe we'll catch you again and talk about Husky hoops, of course. But this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Go get all of Adam's stuff on Zach's blog and wherever else he puts out content. You can find him on X at adamzagoria.com or Adam Zagoria. And this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host. For Adam and myself, stay locked on. Let those toughness meters always rise, and go UConn.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
You got it, buddy.
Way to keep